Function 2 required two vertical asymptotes, one horizontal asymptote, 0 holes, an x-intercept that could be the hole, and an y-intercept that could not be the hole. I created the function y equals x squared over x squared minus 16. This equation could be factored to x times x over x plus 4 times x minus 4. In the end, my function will have two vertical asymptotes at x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 4, as well as one horizontal asymptote at y equals 1, no holes, and an x-intercept and a y-intercept at the origin 0, 0. To find my holes, I set what canceled out in the factored equation equal to 0. Nothing occurs at the top and the bottom of my equation, so nothing will cancel out, and there will therefore be no holes. To find my vertical asymptotes, I set the denominator of my equation equal to 0. X squared minus 16 is the denominator, so x squared minus 16 equals 0. I add 16 to both sides to get x squared equals 16. And then I square root both sides to get x equals plus or minus the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is 4, so I have vertical asymptotes at x equals negative 4 and x equals 4. To find my horizontal asymptote, I find the largest exponent in my equation, and I take the top divided by the bottom. So 1x squared over 1x squared, and I find that the coefficients of both are 1, so 1 over 1 equals 1. I will have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 1. To find my x-intercept, I let y equal 0. 0 equals x squared over x squared minus 16. Multiply both sides by x squared minus 16 to get 0 equals x squared. Square root both sides to get 0 equals x, and my x-intercept is therefore at the origin 0, 0. To find my y-intercept, I let x equal 0. Y equals 0 squared over 0 squared minus 16. 0 squared is just 0, so 0 over negative 16. 0 divided by anything is still 0, so y equals 0, and my y-intercept is also at the origin 0, 0. To graph this equation, I followed the same steps as I did to graph my first function, and I first drew the coordinate plane with my arrows and I labeled my axes. I then drew my asymptotes. I have a vertical asymptote at negative 4 and at positive 4. So I drew vertical dashed lines at both x equals negative 4 and x equals 4. And then I drew my horizontal asymptote at y equals 1. So I drew a horizontal line at y equals 1, and it's a dashed line. I then plotted my x and y intercepts at the origin 0, 0. And because I don't have any holes, I don't have any open dots on my graph. I then used my graphing calculator to find convenient points that I could graph easily, and I made sure to label my intervals on my graph, and again I used 1 for the x-axis and 1 for the y-axis.